Welcome, everybody. We are so glad you have tuned in and really excited about our conversation today. On behalf of the Heinrich-Böll Foundation, TMG Think Tank for Sustainability, and the Global Alliance for the Future of Food, a warm welcome to Soil Atlas 2024, Global and Local Perspectives on a Vital Resource. Again, so pleased that you're all here with us today, celebrating World Soil Day with some amazing guests and speakers. Throughout the webinar, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions by using the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen. We really welcome your questions, and our panelists will be excited to respond to questions that you raise. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Anna LePay, and I'm the Executive Director of the Global Alliance for the Future of Food. We are a strategic alliance of 27 philanthropic foundations working together and with others around the world, including many of you, for principles-based food systems transformation. Before joining the Global Alliance as Executive Director last July, I'd worked for 2 decades as an author and advocate for sustainability and justice along the food chain. And over those many years, I have had the pleasure of often turning to the brilliant work of the Heinrich-Böll Foundation through their atlases to help inform me and my work. And I was pleased, as one of my last projects at my former organization, Real Food Media, to partner with Heinrich-Böll Foundation on the Pesticide Atlas for the US edition. Like all of their atlases, the Soil Atlas is essential reading, beautifully laid out, brilliantly presented, and a huge contribution to our collective conversation about this vital resource. So today, it is a real honor to open up this webinar with just a few words about the importance of this work. And again, a huge appreciation to the Heinrich-Böll Foundation and to all the speakers you'll hear from today. After I share a few words, I'll pass it over to Lena Luig from the Heinrich-Böll Foundation, who'll introduce the panelists and the rest of the agenda for our time together. So if you're here tuning in either to the live stream or here in our Zoom webinar, then you are probably very well aware that soil truly is the foundation of life on Earth. Many of us like to think of soil as a sort of silent worker that sustains our food systems when healthy. And when healthy, it is home to truly innumerable species, and it's a critical actor in mitigating the effects of the climate crisis. Healthy soil also protects our water and provides the abundant food on which all of us depend. Food from the land and food from our water depends on healthy soil, and we know that our waterways are hugely impacted by decisions that we make on the land about how we treat our soil. We also know that access to fertile land is fundamental in our fight against hunger and poverty. And as I said, we know soils are critical allies in adapting to climate change. We've heard again and again, seen it in evidence from around the world, that healthy soils enable farmers to withstand weather shocks that are only going to become more extreme in this age of climate crisis. We've seen that farmers that protect their soils and create healthy soils are better able to withstand droughts and flooding. Again, we know that are only going to become more extreme and more frequent. So yes, it's clear, and the Soil Atlas and our speakers today will help stress this, that we are really at a critical moment in human history when it comes to our soils. We've seen increasing expansion of the use of chemical pesticides and synthetic fertilizers, unsustainable farming methods, and broader pressure on the land that's having a huge impact on this vital resource. As the Soil Atlas tells us, and as many of us know, there is a staggering fact that 1/3 of all soils around the world are already degraded. The consequence of that degradation is soil erosion, biodiversity loss, impacts on food security, and so much more. We also know that this conversation about the environmental impacts of soil degradation is part of a broader story. And as the Heinrich-Böll Foundation, I think, always does, they stress that this story is not just an environmental story. This is not just an environmental issue. This is a social and economic justice issue as well. As land grabs intensify, for instance, and impact soil, we see human rights violations increasing around the world. So when we talk about soil policy, we want to put human rights at the center of that policy and a conversation of social justice at the center of the policy. Again, something that I really credit the voices at the Heinrich-Böll Foundation for doing consistently. At the Global Alliance, we've been working since our inception more than a decade ago on fighting for food systems that are better for people and planet, and that means work to honor and protect the world's soils too, particularly through agricultural practices that foster healthy soil. Over the past many years, we've been working with many of you and some of the speakers you'll hear from today on promoting agroecology and regenerative agriculture, particularly most recently calling for climate finance, more climate finance for agroecology and regenerative agriculture. As some of you may have seen, we just released a new update to our climate finance report where we analyzed public finance for climate and raised the alarm that even though food systems today contribute to about 1/3 of all the global greenhouse gas emissions driving the climate crisis, agroecological and regenerative food systems receive only 1.5% of all public climate finance. This has impacts for so many things we care about, including healthy soil. We've also been working with many of our members around the world and other partners on what we call the food energy nexus, lifting up the impact of a fossil fuel-driven food system on health, climate, food security, and soil. Trying to raise the alarm about the impacts of agrochemicals, pesticides, and synthetic fertilizers on so many intersecting issues, and again, those impacts on our soils. So we at the Global Alliance are really appreciative of the Heinrich-Böll Foundation, one of our dear members. We're appreciative that the Heinrich-Böll Foundation has again given all of us a powerful tool in the form of the Soil Atlas, another powerful tool for lifting up action for healthy soil as a critical global priority. I personally am very excited to hear from the incredible speakers we have with us today. I know we will all learn so much, and I hope that we each leave here more energized to be louder advocates for action on healthy soil. Thank you again for tuning in, and I will pass it over to Lena from the Heinrich-Böll Foundation.
Thank you so much, Anna, for these for these wonderful welcome remarks, and welcome also from my side to this webinar. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Lena Luig. As Anna has said, I'm heading the International Agricultural Policy Division at Heinrich-Böll Foundation in Berlin. And as a first speaker, I would directly like to hand the word over to Larissa Steam-Bhatia. I have to stress here that this Soil Atlas wouldn't have been possible without TMG, our partner organization, and particularly without Larissa. So I want to take this opportunity to thank Larissa for all the energy, all the expertise, and all the hard work that she has put into this atlas. And I'm really happy that now she will present to us some of the highlights, some of the key aspects of the Soil Atlas. So Larissa, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lena, for these kind introductory words. And yeah, welcome everybody also from my side, from the side of TMG. I hope you can see my presentation well on the Atlas. Can I get a thumbs up or?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yes,
it's all good.
Thank you. Okay, great. Now, this is the international edition of the Soil Atlas, and it explores the vital role of soils and the challenges soils face globally. The topics include soils as ecosystems and their diverse functions, drivers of soil degradation, issues surrounding fertilizer use, the global race for land, including land grabbing and its impact on land prices. But the Atlas does not only look at problems, it also offers solutions, such as organic farming, agroecology, and securing land rights to promote soil health. Now, I can only provide you a snapshot during this short presentation, of course, but I will focus on three main messages that we derived from this publication. And the first message is soils are essential for life, but threatened. Soils are literally the foundation of life. Most of our food grows on soil. We live on soil and depend on its ability to buffer the impacts of climate change, such as droughts and floods. Soils are also the Earth's most biodiverse ecosystem, home to countless organisms vital to life, and yet this crucial resource is under threat. Globally, soils are in a serious stage of degradation. 1/3 of soils worldwide are degraded, and in the EU, in the European Union, more than 60% of soils are even classified as damaged. The key drivers include the overviews of chemical pesticides and fertilizers, heavy machinery, and practices like draining peatlands. And this leads to a diverse factors of degradation, as you can see on this world map. And climate change, of course, also drives soil degradation, causing water erosion in the case of heavy rains or desertification in the case of droughts and ever so often drier weather. And desertification is not only happening in typical dryland regions like the Sahel zone in Africa. Today, already 13 EU member states have declared to be affected by desertification. However, we need healthy soils to adapt to climate change at the same time. We need soils as water storage system, especially when we look at the forecast of water stress in the face of climate change, as you can see here on this map. Because soils act like sponges, storing and releasing water during droughts. They make the water available again to plants and to crops. And this water storage function is really critical for agriculture, especially as over 80% of farmland worldwide relies on rainfall. Now, the next slide. Yeah. So soil degradation doesn't only harm farming and food production, but it also imposes high economic costs. And as so often, as you can see here on this map, the poorest regions, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, bear the heaviest burden. Globally, land degradation costs at least 230 billion US dollars per year, a figure that is equivalent to the GDP of Tanzania in 2023, just to put this into perspective. Now, the second message is that soils are in high demand. So soils don't only face degradation, but also increasing demand as a resource. In the past 2 decades, the rush for fertile soils has really intensified. Countries like China, the US, and Switzerland are leading in buying land abroad. And this trend has gained momentum after the 2007-2008 financial crisis, when land was seen as a proof-is-price investment. And soils are also sought after, demanded very highly for not only for investment generally, but also for climate mitigation efforts, such as re-wetting peatlands or planting forests. However, achieving the nature-based climate mitigation goals that are pledged in the country's NDCs would require an additional 1.2 billion hectares of land worldwide. And this is 3 times the size of the European Union. And as seen in this graphic also, soils and forests are primarily targeted for restoration in sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, and Latin America. But these lands are not empty. People live there. They are relying on the land to cultivate, for example, or to hunt. And therefore, it's a big issue that nature-based climate mitigation measures are often planned or already implemented in countries and regions where the land rights of indigenous people, women, and small-scale farmers are often insecure. And that's also why we call the Atlas for a human rights-based approach, as Anna also already pointed out. Now, the third message here is that better soil protection is necessary and also possible. So the challenges around sustainable soil management are immense, and we must really ask ourselves, how do we want to treat our soils in the future? And thankfully, solutions exist. The Soil Atlas showcases promising examples, and our esteemed panelists today will also go into more detail and share their experiences in restoring and protecting soils. So I'm very excited about that. Now, what I want to show you here on the two last slides is one, that sustainable soil management is especially important in farming, as agriculture makes up nearly half of all land use of habitable land worldwide. And while many farmers in the global south see the concept of agroecology as an orientation for sustainable farming, in the EU, it's the principle of organic farming that is more widespread. And in the EU, we have a goal of achieving organic farming on 25% of all farmland by 2030. As you can see, it's still a long way to go, but there are also some front runners, namely Austria, which has already achieved this goal, and Estonia, which is close to achieving it. Now, if we look to India, we can also see that organic farming is on the rise. As a response to the soil crisis, there are more and more farmers are turning to organic farming, so that we also see a recent jump in the percentage of organic farmers. And I'm also really curious to hear more about this from our panelist Vijay Kumar later on. And yes, I leave you with this and hand back to our dear moderator, Lena. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Larissa, for giving an overview over the Soil Atlas. And you can all, of course, dig deeper into it, look at all the different articles, contributions, the graphs, and we also have a series of podcasts. So yeah, feel free to use this resource. But now I'm really happy to be able to present our speakers. Maybe all of you can turn your camera on for a moment so that I can present you well. So we have Rosina Mbenya with us. Rosina is currently the country coordinator at Pelum, Kenya. Pelum Kenya is a membership network that promotes agroecological principles and practices among smallholder farmers and pastoralists. She is an environmentalist by profession and has over 14 years experience in development projects, approaches, techniques in the field of agroecology, climate change, market development, advocacy, capacity development, and networking. It's so great to have you here, Rosina. Then we have Vijay Kumar. Vijay is an advisor on agriculture to the state government of Andhra Pradesh in India. We'll hear more about Andhra Pradesh later in his talk. In his 40 years as a civil servant, he has spent 30 years in large-scale community mobilization and promotion of livelihoods of rural women, tribal communities, and farmers. And he's leading the climate resilient Andhra Pradesh community managed natural farming program of the government of Andhra Pradesh since 2015. In 2024, this year, this program had enrolled 1 million farmers to transition to natural farming. And the vision of the state government is to transition all the 6 million farmer households and 2 million landless farm workers in Andhra Pradesh by 2035. Thanks so much for being here with us, Vijay. Then we have Mine Ramarozon. She is a rural development specialist and a gender activist from Madagascar. Mine is a development economist by training, and she's worked on a variety of issues such as microfinance, education, rural development, gender, and land. She has been involved in lobbying and advocacy around these issues in her country, as well as at regional and global levels. Ms. Ramarozon supports the mainstreaming of gender and women's rights, advocacy on resilience and land issues, capacity building and technical support, project design and implementation and research. She's currently working as the Africa Regional Coordinator for the Wairu Commission. Great to have you here, Mine. And last but not least, we have Dr. Victor Castillo. He's a full research professor at the Department of Soil and Water Conservation in the Spanish National Research Agency in Murcia, Spain. His research focuses on desertification, land degradation, and restoration, particularly in Mediterranean semi-arid environments. And Dr. Castillo had been working at the Science and Technology Unit of the Secretariat of the UNCCD as a lead scientist. From 2021 to 2023, he served as an advisor on desertification to the Spanish Minister for Ecological Transition and Demographic Challenge, coordinating the elaboration of the Spanish strategy to combat desertification. And I'm also happy to mention that Victor Castillo is currently in Riyadh, where the UNCCD conference of the party takes place. So he will be able to give us some live updates from the conference of the party. So thanks for joining in. So I want to start with the first question to Rosina, and we selected a couple of graphs from the atlas that would also fit the different talks of the speakers today. So Rosina, I want to ask you, how can degraded soils become fertile again without using synthetic or mineral fertilizer? And maybe you can also remind us of the drawbacks of the use of mineral fertilizer. I think you've worked a lot on this topic, and here we also see a graph on the import of synthetic fertilizer, nitrogen fertilizer to sub-Saharan Africa. Maybe you want to mention this as well, Rosina.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and greetings everyone. Indeed, as everyone before has talked about the importance of soil, I won't reiterate, but allow me to just also emphasize the importance by saying that it's actually the foundation of the agriculture and food, which forms our largest sector in which most of the African population depend in terms of the economic development. And as this map is being projected, it reminds me that we have a huge role to play, because as you can see, there's a lot of importing of chemical inputs, and particularly synthetic fertilizers in Africa. And these importation, and also if we look at the case of Kenya, for instance, and even the whole of Africa, whereby 65% of our land is actually degraded. And one of the reasons that has caused this degradation is this chemical fertilizer. Actually, in Kenya, we have 63% of our soils being acidic, and highly contributed because of the intensive use of chemical synthetic fertilizer. And if I think we may not be a learning country, because if I look at the statistics in our country, since the year 2008, particularly when we started the intensive subsidy fertilizer programs, which have been highly been one of the government agendas, the productivity has been declining. And the big question is, what is the missing gap? And as Pelham Kenya, we have been the forefront trying to bring out the solution, talking about agroecological practices, talking about organic practice, looking at the soil, the life below the soil as one of the important aspects, and actually aspects to also look at even how do we protect the soil from further degradation, from further soil erosion, and also moving away from chemical synthetic fertilizers. And some of these chemical synthetic fertilizers actually in Kenya and even most of the African countries, some of them have been banned elsewhere, and they're still finding their ways in the African market. But as Pelham Kenya, one of the things that we have been doing, because we are a network of civil society actors promoting agroecology in the country, one of the things is advocacy and policy influence. That plays a great role. And I'm happy that even as we celebrate today's World Soil Day, last week, Kenya was able to launch the National Agroecology Strategy. And that strategy has put a lot of emphasis on soil health, regaining back our soils. And also, if we look at some of the counties, like the Murang'a County, also which passed an Agroecology Act and also a policy, it has also put a lot of emphasis on soil health. And this comes even with a lot of political goodwill, including maybe organic inputs, then particularly, that will come into play to enhance the soil health, because our soils in Kenya are acidic and they have continued to contribute to the reduced fertility, and even we have seen instances of soils not being able to bring the good food that, or in terms of the right productivity. The other aspect that we have continued to play as Pelham Kenya is capacity enhancement, to ensure that our smallholder farmers have the right knowledge, practical skills on various biological inputs, because the solution is with the biological inputs that are there. Looking at practice like bokashi, which we have been able to train farmers practically, and also taking farmers to learn from others, to see from others, and also to take them to learning fairs to be able to see this is possible, and ensuring that also farmers have the information that they're doing the right thing, because sometimes we have seen a lot of brainwashing where farmers are told this is not the right thing, these are new technology, and they're excited, they try new things, and they end up being the wrong thing. But what we are using is what we call the trainer of trainers approach. We train our extension staff, and they're able to reach over 1 million farmers that we are working with. And with this, we have seen a lot of improvement. For instance, we have seen farmers adopting compost manure. We have seen farmers adopting black soldier fly. We have seen farmers being able even to do vermicompost, simple practices that have really, really turned the livelihood of farmers. And talking about the livelihood of farmers, I'll be giving examples in my next, as I talk in the next session, but we have really seen a lot of improvement, even with challenges that come with poor soils. The other thing we have also done as a network is to ensure that we are doing also what we call participatory action research, supporting farmers or linking farmers with scientists so that they can be able to co-create knowledge and learn together. And we have very successful cases. For example, striga weed has been a problem in Western Kenya, and some of our members, for instance, Agris, REFSO, and PrEP program, they have been able to work with farmers and with soil health practices, actually with compost manure. We have seen that the farmers doing soil health, their soil is healthy, they don't have cases of striga weed. And it's a big menace for the maize crops in Kenya. The other aspect we have also been able to do is supporting some of the bio inputs to be able to move from, yes, small-scale farmers being able to do it, but also local innovative private sector being able to do. And even some of our members, like the Organic Agriculture Center of Kenya, Rodi Kenya, they have been able to now package bio inputs. And from the field that we have been able to visit, some of the farmers, like tea farmers, coffee farmers, they're giving great testimonies, or now some of these inputs, they're able to turn their livelihoods. And they have we had a farmer from the tea farmers in Murang'a County who gave a testimony that through the use of bokashi that has been is an organic input, they have seen a double increase of their yields, actually to an extent that they had to be summoned by the tea factory to explain the sudden yields increase from their tea farm. So that is, I mean, to me, those are success stories, and this is what we need in Africa. We need biological inputs that are, one, safe for the environment, two, they're safe for the soil, that they're not killing the life below the soil. That is already, in our problem, but regaining the strength and building and being able to provide the soil. And finally is the aspect of soil testing, because most of the farmers, they just apply ingredients, they don't know the soil component. But we have also focused a lot to empower farmers that you also need to know the soil, so that you are able to know what biological inputs or biological processes are you able to engage. And one of our members, Effective IPM Association, has even now a lab and they're supporting farmers to test the soil. And once you know the soil challenge, you are able to be supported to know which biological inputs you are able to work with. Thank you very much, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosina. We will indeed go deeper into like the very concrete practices and very concrete solutions that your partners are have experience with and that you have experienced. So thanks for already like naming a few of those examples, but thanks also for stressing again like how in the case of Kenya, food productivity or the productivity has actually decreased while increasing the use of mineral fertilizer, of synthetic fertilizer. I think this is very important to have in mind while the fertilizer industry always wants us to believe the opposite, right? That food production will increase when we use more fertilizer, just very generally. So thanks a lot for sharing these experiences. And I want to remind our audience that you're all invited to ask your questions via the questions and answers, the Q&A tool you should all have in your Zoom. So I want to come to the next speaker, Vijay Kumar. So Vijay, I already mentioned in my while I was introducing you that you have been involved in the Andhra Pradesh program on community farming, community natural farming. And can you tell us a bit more about this program, and how has the Indian government, and particularly the government in Andhra Pradesh, incentivized the transition to organic or natural farming? Maybe you can also explain what natural farming means in this context, because for those of us who are not familiar with the program, maybe they're wondering what's the difference between natural farming and organic farming or agroecology. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. I think the time allotted is not enough to go into all these subjects, but I just want to say the Andhra Pradesh community managed natural farming is in the state of Andhra Pradesh, the southern state in India. We have a population of 53 million, and we have around 6 million farmers and 2 million landless farm workers. So our vision is to reach out to all 8 million and transform them to climate resilient natural farming. So we started in 2016, and today we have reached 1 million farmers who are involved in this journey. And that means about 17% farmers and 8% of the cultivable area of Andhra Pradesh is under this transformation. Natural farming is similar to regenerative agriculture in the sense we believe that it is the photosynthesis which is the basis of the all life on earth. And we do not need any organic fertilizers or synthetic fertilizers. If you're able to stimulate or activate the soil biology, then you really don't need any inputs. So it is like we're not feeding the plant, but we're actually feeding the microbes in the soil. So that's the basic difference. So it's organic fertilizers were basically meant to supply nutrients to the plant, but in natural farming, the biological inputs are essentially to trigger the soil biology, whereas the food for the microbes actually comes from the plants itself. So its plants are feeding the soil. Now, when it comes to incentives, so here we went actually against the tide. So Government of India offers multiple incentives. One is, upfront cash support. Almost 50% of the unit cost is basically cash transfers to farmers. And sometimes they subsidize the organic inputs and also help in, certification of the farmers so that they can get a higher price. The assumption is that organic farming is, not profitable. So therefore, the state has to provide subsidies and also help them to get a higher price. In Andhra Pradesh, in contrast, we don't offer any subsidies. So we basically went against the tide. We don't offer any subsidies to farmers who are transitioning, but instead we motivate them through real life examples. And we provide long-term support to the farmers, the knowledge support. And I think that is something, it's not counted as an incentive, but that's the most important thing in the transformation. So that's why our effort is the lowest cost in terms of we are actually doing this at about 1/3 the cost or 40% of the cost of what Government of India allows. So in our case, the best practicing farmers through their examples motivate other farmers. And the second is we have organized women, the women self-help groups. So what we found is that women are motivated to take up natural farming, and it actually goes against the household because the husband has heard from the agriculture department that you should use fertilizers, but the woman says no. From her group she has heard that this is bad. So it is not the incentive you require, it is basically the family counseling. So like true scientists, every household, part of their land, is what the women decides, and part of the land is what the man decides. And I can tell you, out of million households, 100% the men have lost because the women have turned out to be better. And after 1 year or 2 years, the husband also agrees that natural farming is better. So we should not forget the tension in the household. Sometimes it is between father and son. So when we are offering incentives, we are actually not analyzing the obstacles to this transformation. So we realize that proof of concept very close to farmers needs to be provided through best practicing farmers, and within the household there has to be a consensus on this. And when we enter a village, we tell the farmers that we are here for the next 8, 10, 15 years till the entire village transforms. So that assurance of continuous support is what really enables this. And finally, I would say, by not offering any incentives, we challenged ourselves. In the sense, we said we must continuously improve our technologies so that for farmers, the transition is not a risk, but it is seen as an opportunity. So I'll end here because, you can't stop me from going. So given the time limit, I'll stop here.
Thank you. I think we will also have more time and more opportunities to go more into detail throughout this webinar, this discussion. But thanks for already flagging this very interesting approach also. So I want to move to Mine Ramarozon. I want to ask you, you're an expert on women's land rights, and Vijay already just said, like, mostly it's women making good decisions, like in the sense of having like long-term decisions that are good for soil health. So how do land rights? What's the role of land rights here? So how is insecure access to land also hindering farmers, especially women, to invest in soil restoration?
Thank you so much, Lina, and thank you for having me with you. And what Vijay was saying really resonate with me because that's how we also support our member groups. As World Commission is a grassroots women-led organization. And we started this journey on working on land rights, women land rights, because of housing and eviction happening in cities, but also in rural area, because of the commercial pressure on land and things like that. And women not having access to fertile soil, fertile land, but having to settle on bad land every time that they want to go to do agriculture because of the lack of control over the land. They have access to land, but they don't have the control over the land. So what we said is it's a long-term investment when we want to restore the soil. That I heard Rosina, I heard Vijay saying the same. And the women, they have no choice because they have to bring food on the table every day. And when we look at this graph that you are showing, you see that land really belongs to, it's a male owned business when we talk about agriculture in general, and you have a lot of women working in the agriculture sector, although they don't have the access to land, that they need to provide food. And I'm just going to take some example of how insecure women's access to land is. when land now is restored. I'm going to take the case of in Kenya, in Homa Bay County, when women went to can I say improve the irrigation scheme in the area, so that now they have rehabilitated land with access to water, and at the end of the day they have lost that land. So what incentive are they going to have if they are investing a lot of money for grassroots women, and then at the end of the day they are losing the land? The same happened in Zimbabwe when the women's group went to the traditional authorities, asked for land, get the land that has not access to water. So they went and asked for funding to invest in water pumps. And as soon as the water pumps was there and the land was productive, they were again evicted from that land. And I can go on and on and on that. But and then the same happens, for example, in Madagascar, where I'm from, when the women have the water erosion on the hilltops, and they have access to that land. So they put in a lot of effort to arrange the land, and at the end of the day, again, they are losing that land because it's no more productive. So that's the insecurity they are facing, but they don't have any choice than do the work in improving the soil and the land because of this fact that they need to provide food on the table. They need to look into the community health also. So all of those are happening. I know that I have some more time to talk about the solution, but those are the main points maybe that I want to address quickly now, and then I can go more in depth later on. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Min. That's perfect. So I would like to move to Victor then. Victor Castillo, what are your observations? I mean, I was also saying in my introduction that you have also done some advisory work for the Spanish government. So you're very well. You've done a lot of research in Southern Europe, in the Mediterranean. So could you share a little bit of your observations of soil degradation and desertification in Europe? I think this is interesting because at least when we're talking about UNCCD, it was like misunderstood in the beginning as, okay, this is like this is a convention only for for states that are affected by desert, that have deserts, and it's mainly an African. But I think this is also very relevant, like desertification, talking about desertification is also very relevant in Europe. Would you agree?
Okay, thank you. You're perfectly right. I would like to thank you for having me with these esteemed colleagues. It's for me an honor to share these conversations. So, well, I think many of us at the European level has very often heard that more than 60% of European soil are unhealthy. What does it mean by unhealthy? Unhealthy means that the soil can no longer provide provision and services like producing food or fiber or raw material. The soil is not capable to regulate carbon and water cycle, or is not able to support the establishment of habitat, or to provide nutrients, or we are losing cultural and historical aspect linked to the soil. So we as European, we face a big problem because soil is, some of my colleagues say, is a key element to sustain life, and almost 70% of our soil is in unhealthy situations. The causes of these maladies is very wide. Most is because of losing of soil organic carbon. It's about 22% of the situations. Soil erosion by water is also a big cause of unhealthy soils. I can tell you that 1/3 of agricultural lands is present degradation because of soil erosion. It's as before, I think in the presentation, soil atlas is not only a biophysical problem, it's also translated into an economical problem. This is estimated in 1.25 billion of euros is the cause of soil erosion, only the on-site effect. This is only due to the decrease or losing of agricultural productivities. We are not considering, we are not taking into account in this figure the costs associated to off-site effect, in let's say, less transport, sediment transport, siltation or irrigation works and reservoir, or the effect of flooding. So this is the situation that is more or less well known in Europe related with soil. But you asked me, what about desertification? What is about desertification in Europe? That is very true that people think about desertification like something, at least in northern in Europe, in other Western countries, that is something that happens just far away. It is like the Sahara moving southward or moving northward, but the desertification is not that problem. The desertification basically is land degradation in dry lands. In dry lands means that the demand of water, the atmospheric water demand, the demand of the atmosphere, the humidity is not well supplied by precipitations. The precipitation only supplied until 60% of the demand. So all the system is subjected to a very stress because of permanent irrig situations. It means that the productivity is very low and we are very fragile environment. In this fragile environment, we are asking for more resources demand that the system is able to provide us. We are deteriorating the quality of the land resources of this system till they are reached as a situation that is defined like desertification. So when we're talking about desertification, we are talking about land resources. That means not only soil, but also water and also vegetal cover, basically. Well, coming back to the certifications, well, there are no an agreed common methodology to estimate the certification at global and regional level, but it's considered that Europe, most than 30%, no, around a quarter, 23% of Europe is affected moderately by desertification, 8% in a high level. So as Larissa said, there are 13 countries that consider itself affected by desertification. It is wrong. We have to update the atlas. 2 days ago, France declared itself affected as by desertification. So this is something I can communicate from here. So now there are 14 countries in Europe that declare itself affected by desertification. Which is the main causes of desertification in Europe? Basically, it will say the intensification of our agricultural system. Intensification of agricultural system produce soil degradation processes, basically soil erosion, soil salinizations, and soil compaction that could lead to a desertification status. Additional, we are this kind of intensive agricultural system, they are very much water demand. So we are suffering our overexploitation of water resources. That is translated in, for instance, in a depletion of water table on the groundwater. That is an important reservoir for water for the future. But because over pumping and overuse of the water resources, we are declining the water, the groundwater. And also we are deteriorating the water quality. the over fertilization of this kind of intensive agricultural system produce non-point pollution that mainly nitrogen and phosphorus that deteriorated the water quality of rivers and water bodies. Two other elements that is related with desertification in Europe: the increasing of heat waves, the increasing of the magnitude and frequency on droughts, and also as a consequence, also we can observe more bigger wildfire. That is because of increase of wildfire risk across Europe. So that's the situation. But looking at the future, it seems the situation is not very bright. Let's say during this COP, the Scientific and Policy Interface of the UNCCD published a report that informed us that globally, almost more than 70% of land surface become drier in the last 30 years. That it means that around 4 million square kilometers of lands that were classified as humid lands are now become dry lands. And it is had an important impact. If you look at, and it's relative with the pictures you are looking at, because the problems sometimes is not because the lack, because of course this is a problem. It's not a problem because a reduce of precipitation. It's also because the warming increased the demand, the vapor transpiration, and it is led to a decrease of the soil moisture, as you can see in the picture. It means that for the crop yield is reduced, the possibility of the capacity or restoration is reduced, so we are facing a more or difficult situations. Just for finish, in the same report, we also they presented future scenario, and future scenario under climate change say us that in the favorable condition, let's say in the most favorable scenario, or almost an additional 2% of Earth land is moving from humid condition to dry conditions. So we need to be careful and be well adapted for this future scenario. And that's what I would like to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victor, for also getting the figures right. This is very interesting, this update of even more member states declaring themselves as affected by desertification at EU level, but also thank you for going beyond Europe already in your answer. So I would like to have a second round of questions with you before also looking at questions from the audience. Please, for the audience, for who is watching, feel invited to ask your question via the question and answer tool. And I want to go back to Rosina now. So you already mentioned some very concrete solutions, some very concrete practices that the farmers you're working with are applying on their fields. So you mentioned vermicompost, bokashi, compost manure. What do you say? What are the can you go more into detail about these concrete examples? Like how do they work for the farmers? And how do they also work in terms of not only enhancing soil fertility, but also long-term soil health? So what's the difference basically to just applying fertilizer and having like synthetic fertilizer and having a boost for fertility in the short run?
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll be able to explain a bit of more of the examples, and also basically these are sustainable practices in agriculture that actually, one, friendly to the environment, two, they are looking at improving the soil health in a sustainable manner, and not just the fertility of the soil, but comprehensively looking at the health of the soils, because as we said, we have a problem with our soils. And one of them is bokashi. Basically, bokashi is from fermented organic materials. And in our network of Pelham Kenya, together with our members, we have ensured that most of the farmers are now aware of how to make the bokashi. Okay, sometimes they need different ingredients, maybe farmyard manure, molasses, husks from different crops, but also we find it's also helpful in solving some of the crises, because, you know, originally also some of the waste, if I can call it, from food crops like rice husk, maize husks, all those, they have been giving farmers a challenge. And I know continents, for instance, I know India, they ban a lot of these farm waste. So they are also forming a solution in some of these challenges that we have. Some of this waste, if I can call that, but now it's not waste, they can be able to convert through some of these fermenting processes, make bokashi. And the good thing about bokashi, it's usually ready to use in 2 weeks. And we have seen the testimonies from farmers, including some of the cash crops, as I initially mentioned, coffee farmers, tea farmers, testifying about the greatness of this bokashi. Actually, it plays a role like a soil conditioner. Some other practices that we are promoting are also like black soldier fly. I know most of us know this in an insect pest, which is also very great in turning the waste, waste into useful ingredients. One, it can be able to provide chicken feed through the larva stage, and two, also able to solve the challenge of bio-waste that, as mentioned, they could have been forming a lot of challenges to farmers, but now becoming a useful ingredient. And the good thing about black soldier fly, it can also be done at large scale, and I've also seen some of the private sector, for instance, the Regen Organics in Kenya, they are now having like the Evergrow organic fertilizer that they're able to make and even package and sell in the market. But also farmers are also able to make, only that for black soldier flies, it needs maybe hot temperatures, and so they are not probably very suitable for very cold areas. But at the same time, the farmers who are employing this black soldier fly, they are able to get this fresh fertilizer, which is very, very effective to build the health of the soil. The other practice that within our network is being applied is the looking at cropping systems. I know these are not agricultural practice that has been taught in universities, in colleges and schools, but it's working. It's working because, one, farmers are able to do intercropping, whereby you put, for example, cereals, particularly legumes, they're very good in nitrogen fixation. You put and you intercrop with other crops. And I've witnessed that farmers with this kind of practice, they're able to even record increased yields. And I'm happy I saw a report from ICRAF, which was presented by a researcher there, showcasing their long-term trials in Malawi on the intercropping system. And it was also confirming that it's workable and it can fix the nitrogen deficiency that most of the chemical fertilizer tries to handle with the NPK. In Kenya, we have a very common one called NPK. So this has been helpful. And also in terms of cropping system, farmers are also able to do crop rotation so that you're able to grow different crops in this area location, and then the next time you change, and there are particular crops that are able to fix the nitrogen in the soil. Another practice that is being practiced within our network is the biochar, and basically from also farm waste, like the maize stalks and the stovers, or even rice husk, coffee husk, coconut shell, they're able to be turned into biochar. And this, it is working out. And even we have private sector again who are so packaging some of them, like the Safi Organics, which is an award-winning company here in Kenya. They have also been using this technique to make biochar. And also farmers who have practiced. We have one of our members called Manaus Agricultural Center, who is also has been doing some of the what we call the participatory action trials in their farm and also with their farmers. And also they have done a lot of on-farm trials on this, and it also showcases the power of biochar in building the health of the soil. The other aspect we have is mulching. I know we have probably heard a lot about conservation agriculture practices. So mulching, it could be from dry mulching, living mulching, but basically with the conservation agriculture, it helps to retain the soil moisture. Also, it suppresses the weeds, and at the same time is protecting the soil biodiversity. So it's a technique that we also been encouraging our farmers to use, particularly in the very dry areas where there's a lot of drought, so that it can help in retaining the water, the moisture of the soil, the water moisture in the soil. The other technique is the bioslurry, and I like this. I think my dissertation in the university was about bioslurry, and actually particularly biocenters in some of the slums in Kenya. And now this bioslurry is basically from the animal waste, and it converts. One, it helps the farmer. We have a big problem of clean energy in Kenya. Most of the women, I think the presenter talked about the women, but also one of the challenges that our women are facing is lack of clean cooking gas, and they continue to cook in very weird traditional methods. But I like this technique because the farmer is cooking with clean energy. At the same time, they are able to get the bioslurry, which they can apply on their farm and can change their livelihood. And I'm also a believer of the power of integrating livestock within the farming system. I think most of agroecological practices also rely heavily on livestock, for instance, manure and so on. So I love the bioslurry. I think my parents have been livestock keepers there, but at small scale, and I think this is one of the powerful techniques, the bioslurry, I love at a personal level. Then in terms of the other practices, we also have like super magro. Those are also other practices, that liquid kind of biofertilizer, which comes from an anaerobic fermented practice. And yeah, it's also powerful. And the farmers using it, particularly in Western Kenya, they have also confirmed that their soils are more healthier and they're able to withstand and also give them more yields. The other practice that we are using is agroforestry. It's also a practice which has been for many years taught in schools, but also some of the trees, we all know they have the advantages. Some are nitrogen fixers. For instance, we have trees in Kenya we call sesbania, which we have been promoting within our network because they are also very good in nitrogen fixation. We also have trees like Tifrose fogeli, which are very good in nitrogen fixation, and at the same time, they are also very good as other, like pesticide needs within the farm. Of course, we know about compost manure, and farmers can also, or they have been doing through farm waste manure composting. I already talked about vermicompost, and last month I was in Kisumu and I was so amazed to see even youth who are doing family liquids, and even some are packaging some of these family liquids. They have turned them to businesses, and also like some private sector like Real IPM company in Kenya, which has been doing this by inputs for many years. I've been using this farm compost technique. We also have farmyard manure, and even actually in Kenya, we also have private sector cottage and organics. I hope I'm not advertising their companies, but I also want to showcase the power of the bio sector, not only for farmers, but even for business stakeholders there. So they are also doing this kind of technique, and also from the reports I read that Quebec is in the process of opening a very big plant, bio input plant, which will be getting a lot of raw materials from Africa and elsewhere. So I think it's also an opportunity for a lot of investment in bio inputs, because at the end of the day, we also need inputs that are very safe to the farmers and also are very accessible, and that are not degrading the environment and the soils. We also have some farmers doing biostimulants, and particularly with the Knowledge Center for Organic Agriculture. That has been one of the knowledge products that we have documented. And our farmers that have been using the biostimulant, they have showcased that their production has really, really increased, and it has solved a lot of challenges. I talked about the striker wheat, but I want to emphasize it because in Kenya, where maize is our staple food, it has become a cry for most of the farmers. And through the participatory action research studies that have been done through the FRN NGO McKnight funded projects in Western Kenya, the soil health component of just using these various techniques that I've shown, and particularly the compost manure, has showcased the importance, and farmers have testified. I was in the field in Kisumu and I saw for myself that farmers who have stronger soil health, or their soil is more health, they are not struggling like others. Yeah, so we all need to invest in organic inputs. We also need to invest in the building ourselves so that we can have strong health, healthy soils that can feed us, that can take care of us. And once we protect the soil, it shall also protect us, it shall also feed us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rosina. Yeah, I think this was very impressive, just naming all these different techniques that the farmers you're working with are using. So you really cannot tell there wouldn't be anything out there to, to solve the problem. There's a lot. So thanks so much for sharing all these practices with us. Vijay, I want to turn to you again. So you already talked about the Andhra Pradesh natural farming program and about not using subsidies and instead more working together with farmers and farmers teaching other farmers and just showing how it works. So could you also be a bit more concrete? Like what role does soil play in this program in Andhra Pradesh? And what's your most impressive story on soil restoration that you want to share with us? Now you're okay.
Soil is so critical for everyone's survival. In fact, in India, we call, Earth as Mother Earth. So soil is deified. It's like God. But we learned over these 9 years that we should not see soil as a discrete entity. There is a continuum. Life is basically solar energy being converted to food by the plants, part of the food being put into the soil, which then stimulates the microbes, then gets all the other elements into the plants. Then air is providing some nutrients, water is providing some nutrients. So beginning, we didn't see this very clearly, but now we see very clearly that it is a holistic approach that we need to take. It's soil, sunlight, air, water, elements, the living beings, animals, microbes, they all play a role. But ultimately, the health of the soil, we should not see soil as a stock. That's the point I'm making. It's a flow, because before life on earth began, you just had hard rocks, and then they all became soils. But in terms of our own learning, in fact, I was very impressed by Rosina's mentioning of the biological inputs. So we, right from the beginning, we used a lot of biological inputs. But actually, the biggest revelation came to us when we realized that, the real hero is the plant. It's feeding the soil. So that's when we went deeper. And today, we have found a solution to water through healthy plants. And this is one of the biggest breakthroughs that we have had in our work. We are finding through regenerative agriculture, through natural farming, the plants are healthier. And because they are triggering the, very diverse microbes in the soil. So when the plants are healthier, the leaves are hygroscopic. So we are actually finding plants are harnessing water from the air. So plants grown in chemical agriculture are actually repelling water, and plants grown in natural farming are harnessing water from the air. So then we realized that we should actually emphasize on 365 days green cover, crop diversity, multi-layered farming. So the most impressive learning has been that are we harnessing the sunlight optimally? Are we feeding the soil with diverse plant root exudates so the diverse microbes are triggered, and then all plants get all the nutrients, and then you stimulate the life above the ground. So the net result is we keep learning new things every day. And so therefore, I've traveled a very long way. For instance, we used to believe that some plants fix nitrogen, the legumes fix nitrogen. Now we are finding that every plant fixes nitrogen. So what you need is crop diversity. So I just want to say we are learning more as we learn to understand how nature functions. So we believe that if you are able to replicate the forest ecosystem, then you don't need any biological fertilizers, you don't need any chemical fertilizers. It is crop diversity, animal diversity which takes care of it. So we have solved the water problem. We also, you know, we are able to harness water better. So by understanding the science, understanding Mother Nature, we are finding some very interesting solutions. And as a result of our work, we are finding that land is becoming more fertile, but more important, 1 acre of land where only one crop used to grow in a year, but through regenerative agriculture, through natural farming, we are actually getting 3 crops. And then through multi-layer farming, 1 acre of land is actually becoming 3 acres of land. So that is the biggest breakthrough that we have had, that through this crop diversity, multi-layered farming, we are not only increasing the incomes of farmers, we are producing more healthy food, and all this is contributing to huge increase in soil fertility. And I must tell you, the biggest learning for me this year is that some of the farmers are saying our soils are so fertile, we are not going to apply any biological inputs also. It's only to keep the soil covered with living root 365 days of the year. So we keep learning all the time. So, and most of our learning has been so transformative that we believe lot of these assumptions in agriculture science need to be revisited. Otherwise, we are teaching wrong science. But we can actually solve climate change if farmers can cool their own land. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks so much. This is very encouraging, and thanks for stressing also the learning journey that we're all in. Yeah, I
We
think
made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, this is a humble work, right? A humbling work. Mean, I want to get back to this land rights issue. So what would you say, what are the barriers and also the solutions to securing land rights in Africa? You can also go beyond Africa, of course, but I understood you have most experience in Africa. And how can securing land rights be streamlined in soil restoration initiatives? What would you say?
Thank you so much, Lina, and I'm learning a lot. I really enjoyed what Fitja was saying, and also Rosina, because we are on some other. We are talking about rights more than. We're talking about land use, but we never go in depth in the land use and soil protection and restoration. So it's a very nice panel that I'm part of. So thank you for that. When you look at barriers, then on land rights, especially women land rights, you look at social norms. Sometimes they can be good, but in most of the time, especially in Africa and also in Latin America, we have these social norms that are like really focusing on men, because land is a man issue, as we saw. Another one is also the lack of implementation of gender responsive land policies that are existing in countries. For example, in Guatemala, they put into place a land fund, especially for women, but it's not used. They are not implementing it. So what is the importance of having such laws and also good tools, but if they are not used? So in Africa, for example, we have the AU framework and guidelines with very strong principle on gender. We have the VGGTs, the voluntary guidelines on responsible tenure of land, forest and fisheries, that also have strong principle on women land rights and also on small scale farming, but it's not used and that much. And then there is the lack of knowledge of the women and men on the ground of the importance of women accessing and controlling land, so that what Feche was saying, the women, if they have access and they're looking at let's improve our way of working on land, we are getting more production, and then the man is following. But if you have such maybe schemes, then it would be better in the use or in terms of land use. And one of the issues that we are also looking is the involvement of communities really when designing schemes or getting funding for soil restoration, because it's sometimes so complicated, then the communities just leave it out of the work that they do. So what kind of solution especially are already out there that could be included in the soil restoration projects and financing? For example, the Global Land Tool Network created the continuum of land rights that is starting from informal to the formal. So there is a lot of rights in between that could be included and also reflect on, so that we are protecting each rights along the continuum. There is other tools on land registrations that can be community-led. There is a tool that we call social tenure domain model that is really registering the rights of all the people on a parcel of land. So it's really something that works. We use it. It can be used in cities and also in rural areas, especially in customary settings. Well, you have the traditional leaders, you have the kings, you have the chiefs that are deciding for the land, and having that kind of digital tool to register the different layer of customary ownership without really giving a land title, but securing the rights of the owner, especially women, is something that is really of relevance when you do soil restoration, because then the woman is written on the certificate, and no one can take it out of that land when the land is restored, for example. And we talked about that because this institutionalization of this approach of women getting the land, and for example, the use of the land lease guidelines, like women leasing land, but securing that land lease for 5-10 years so that they can get return on their investment on the land restoration. And also one is the recognition of women's role in agriculture, and then putting them on the forefront of decision-making processes for land use and control at the community level is something that is really ongoing, and we are doing pushing a lot on that part. And we have also developed some tools like the gender evaluation criteria, which is a tool that makes you think about, there is 21 questions, 6 criteria of is the project that you are having, is it gendered enough or not? And how can we then, because it's a work in progress, how can you then include women within a project or program or in a land policy or things like that? Yes, I think I can stop here, and if there is any other question, I could also come back to this because of time, but I can't go on.
Yeah. Thank you, Min. This is very helpful, very, very interesting also to have this kind of criteria in mind that is important from your perspective. I would ask the last question to Victor. So going back to what is happening now in Riyadh, you're in Riyadh for the UNCCD Conference of the Parties. It's, I guess, the least known of the three Rio conventions. And what do you think? Like, what's happening there at the moment? Like, what's the atmosphere, and where you hopeful maybe of any progress, and where you're skeptical? And progress particularly in terms of achieving the land degradation neutrality goal.
Okay, thank you. We are in the first week. Is expecting this call will be the big event ever related with land. So the views and the feelings are optimistic. I will when I preparing this panel, I write down some of my feelings after 2 or 3 days. And I like, because some of the issues we raise, all my colleagues in the panel, I think I'm happy that this is in the core of the discussion during these days here in Riyadh. Let's say, I think one of the idea is land is increasingly recognized as a key element to address all the environmental challenge. This land management, without good land management, we cannot face climate change, we cannot face food security, we cannot face loss of biodiversity. And it is something that is increasingly recognized. There was some kind of speeches in the opening ceremony, one presentation by George Rostron that put land as a cornerstone that the humanity could live in this kind of planetary boundaries, in the safe of the planets. If we are not addressing land issues, we are not achieving, we are not surviving. Basically, I can say so forth. And this is a good news, because as you say, desertification is considered like the Cinderella of the Rio Conventions. It's something that sounds strange, sounds very far, and it's becoming more and more prominent, more and more pivotal role of the land. This is a good news. Well, it also gives the opportunity for a call for a greater synergy among the three Rio Convention, that in order to and this is it's also, if you look forward, is also pave the way for getting more resources for land management. Because if we recognize with our land management, we are now achieving the objective of environmental and development objective, we need to provide resources for good land management. And it is something that you can see in the spirit of these days. Well, we are recognize also the importance, the sustainable land use systems that put together environmental sustainability, but also economic viability and also social justice. So there are some decisions related with issues like gender, perspective of gender in land management, in coping with the desertification and degradation, and also some decision is expected to deliver related with land tenure as a crucial element for the good for implement successful policy for sustainable land management. And there is another, I think another line of working with very much interest is the how to cope with drought. I'll say before, drought is expected to be more frequent and more intense. And there is a call, and there is for shifting for reactive crisis management to a proactive risk management approach. And in this risk management approach, among other elements, again, highlight good land and water management practice could reduce the impact of drought on food security, on human well-being. I think this is the positive. negative or more skeptical, to be, I think, to be more precise. While still, for some countries, it looks the certification is a regional, local issues and not a global one. Even with this kind, I think this is something is becoming sorted out because of what I said at the beginning, the land has a pivotal role on land, but still it is some. And I would say that the main problem is the low pace to permeate, to go from this global international initiative to be implemented on ground. In this context, UNCCD always rely on the bottom-up approach, give an important and prominent role to the community-based organizations, because they are key in translate this kind of, let's say, decisions into an effective on-ground implementation. So I'm quite optimistic. I think the UNCCD during the last 2-3 COPs is increasing their recognition as a land management authority at global level that could foster the implementation of sustainable land use system at ground level and local levels. So that's my impression after 4 days of the COP. Still, let's see, but be optimistic.
Thank you. There's at least some optimism, so that's great. I think in these times, this is very, very precious to have a bit of optimism. And thanks so much for sharing these insights from Riyadh. So actually, time is already up. We had this very, very interesting discussion today. I have learned a lot. I have learned a lot about very concrete examples of how to restore soils, whether that be in Kenya or in India and Andhra Pradesh. I learned more about the necessary framework conditions for soil restoration, namely secure land rights and also control of land, especially for women. And I also learned, what's being discussed at UNCCD COP and the more, also technical scientific background on the term desertification, what it actually means. So thank you so much for these insights. I also want to thank the Global Alliance again for co-hosting this webinar. Thanks to TMG, of course, to our partner organization for the Soil Atlas. And thanks again to all the authors who contributed to the Soil Atlas. Please feel free to read all the different contributions. They were so valuable. And I really hope this is a resource that is still being used. Thanks to all the panelists here, and thanks for watching this event. If you stayed until the very end, thanks so much for your patience and for your interest. And I wish you a good day, a good evening, a good afternoon, wherever you are at the moment. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.